Geoff Mosher, you'll hear him every Thursday night, although they're off this week for Mosher, McMullen, and Krause. Mosher Mondays, and right now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline, Mosher, as the Eagles make a trade. I don't know if it's a huge surprise. I saw Golden Tate tweet out this morning a picture of him just like sweating, which was an indication, I guess, he felt he was going to get traded. I don't know if he thought he was coming to Philadelphia, but is this, a satisfying move for the Eagle fans out there?
Well, first of all, he just tweeted out a few minutes ago a meme of Rocky statue saying that's his mood. So at least we know Golden State is happy they're coming to Philadelphia, and obviously why wouldn't he be? And secondly, got to say thank you to Monday Marcus for his patience and not calling in and giving me some time with you, Mike. Now, the move. Look, I think it's very fair. It's one of those moves where there's a really strong argument for it, and there's a really strong argument against it.
What's the strongest argument against it? Let's start there. What's the biggest argument against this?
So I would say that it's a very fair argument that you're giving up a third-round pick for a guy who you only could have for 8 games, and if you understand that every move should be made not just with the current in mind, but also the future. This team is clearly, guys, going to go over a major roster facelift in the next offseason. There's going to be a lot of high-priced veterans that aren't going to be on the team, and they may even give Carson Wentz the contract extension now and make him, if not the highest-paid player in the league, one of the. And so they will need lots of good, cheap labor, which you can only get in the form of draft picks who are cost-controlled for 3 or 4 years. So every pick, especially a third-round pick, which is a significant one, is meaningful, and they are giving a third-round pick for a guy who they're only getting for 8 games, and it's not even as much as I believe wide receiver is a big need for them. You can make an argument that defensive back, tackle, running back are also needs. So that's where I'm playing both sides of the fence here, and I'm saying if you argue the points that I just made, you can definitely say that it's a very steep pick.
But I
would also say, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to interject real quick. If you get a 4th-round pick in 2020 as a compensatory pick for Golden Tate leaving Golden State,
right?
Then doesn't that negate some, maybe not all, but some of your concern?
It negates some of it, and that would be part of what I make for the pro doing it argument. But obviously, the lower the round you – first of all, we can't assume it's going to be a 4th-round pick. I know Daniel Jeremiah, others said it could be a 5th. It all depends on the contract, right? It all depends on his productivity. If he breaks his leg next week in his first game or against the Cowboys or the Eagles, he ain't getting a big contract, and that's going to influence what
if he breaks his leg, then we're blaming you after this.
Yeah, why would you even say that, Moshe?
I'm just bringing up the risk involved in this.
Oh, my God. You got dark, man. We were bringing you on to have a nice, fun, positive interview, and you're just saying everyone's going to break their leg now.
All right, let me do it a different way. If they decide they bring him in, and he's a slot receiver, and he can no longer play on the outside, and now you got a jumbled bunch of slot receivers, and his production isn't there, well, then maybe he doesn't get the big contract, and it doesn't give them as much of a pick. But to your point, Eitan, it is true you get that, but you can also say, you know what, that's a pick that you're getting not this coming April, but the next one. So it doesn't really – does it help you – future, yes. Does it help you next year when everybody always wants to have draft picks for whatever draft it is? You kind of get you get jittery about not having that pick next year and then not having the comp pick until 2 years later.
Moshe, how much better is this offense now? I know that's a broad question, but his impact, what's going to be different now, and how much does their play calling change? How do they work him into this offense? Does it help the running game now by getting more space or putting the defense on their heels a little bit more? What does it do for this offense?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ryan, and I'm fascinated to see how it works out. I think that he's having a great year at his age with the Lions because he's in the slot, and that's a good spot for him because they have Kenny Golladay on the outside and they have Marvin Jones on the outside, and he's such a unique player in that he's almost like a Darren Sproles-like running back once he catches the ball. He's so shifty. His run after the catch, his yards after the catch is always among the league's highest. I was looking at his stats. He's had a catch of 50 or more yards in 7 of his 8 years, a catch of 60 or more yards in 5 of his 8 years, and he has 3 or 4 years where he's had at least one catch of 70 yards. So, and he's not DeSean in that you just line him up on the outside and he runs past a wide receiver. He does that mainly by having incredibly elusive moves in the open field. And now he goes in to an offense where Doug has 5 targets every play. It's a space-centric offense, so he should be able to function in that space. But we have to see how he adjusts to playing back on the outside. It is something he has done before. It is an area he's played and done well at, but he just hasn't done it recently as much. So we'll have to see if he can still produce. And Doug will draw up things like deep crosses and deep digs. It's not just going to be 9 routes because, again, that's not his thing. And they'll figure out a way to get him to draw coverage deep and get the ball in a way that he's normally expecting to get the ball.
Hey, real quick, how much has that been a problem for this team? Mike brought up in the first hour about how Shady McCoy had to deal with 9, maybe 10 guys at times in the box, and the run game was stifled. How much has this been an issue this year specifically, if at all, that they haven't had a guy, even if it's not named DeSean, to be able to consistently take the top off the back end of the defense?
I think it's been huge. I mean, we've talked a lot about, maybe Torrey Smith doesn't catch everything thrown his way last year, but he certainly draws a lot of penalties with his ability to still run down the field. He certainly draws coverage. He commands attention. And because of that, because of having Torrey there, you were able to leave Nelson in the slot and just say, go, Nelson, go. And Nelson, to me, is no different than last year. I don't think his skill set is eroded. I don't think he was just on fire. He still makes good catches. I just think that he needs to stay in the slot. And I believe with Tate on the outside and Jeffrey on the outside and Aguilar staying in the slot, that this offense is much more equipped to be multidimensional again instead of relying all the time on Ertz and Aguilar and Ertz and Aguilar. I think you almost get 2 for 1.
Let me interject this question for you.
And whatever Aguilar from the slot.
Okay, so what do you think happens with Aguilar Matthews? We kind of, had a little discussion about that. I can't imagine them minimizing.
Matthews. Playoffs.
Well, that's what I said. Matthews. I said, how is anybody even bringing Matthews up? He's irrelevant now. He's off. He's out, right?
Well, I mean, think about it. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to get cut, but I mean, who knows what kind of moves they make in the long term. But usually your bottom roster wide receivers are special teams players. So if you're going to go into a game with 5 active receivers, it's going to be Nelson, it's going to be Alshon, it's going to be Golden Tate. You're probably going to have DeAndre Carter in there for punt return purposes, especially if Sproles, you want to ease and lessen his load. I mean, I can see Matthews being in there. There might be a role, but am I missing a wide? Or maybe when Matt Collins comes back, which could be by the Dallas game, actually, you may see Jordan Matthews not on this team.
Yeah, that's going to be the biggest thing is Matt Collins, and I know that people were kind of optimistic Mike Wallace could be pulled back from the IR as well, but that's why I'm shocked they made a trade for a wide receiver. I thought that today, if there was going to be a trade, you would see a cornerback. Like I thought HaHa Clinton-Dix at safety and Gary and Conley were the 2 names where I would not be shocked if they were traded here to Philadelphia. I did not expect at all, based on your point about Matt Collins coming back as early as Sunday night, a week from this Sunday night, that a trade would be made for a wide receiver.
Well, some of it I think is just about what's available. We've talked about safeties before, that even bad teams, if they have good young safeties, they're probably not going to give them up unless they get, again, their socks knocked off. And I don't know how many good young safeties are available. Carl Joseph is a guy in Oakland who's more of a box safety.
West Virginia.
The Eagles, they're looking for, yes, I know. They're looking more. Another underperforming West Virginia player, by the way. They're looking for more of a deeper safety. And then with Conley, I suspect corner was going to be really hard for them to not only get, but even if they did, think about a corner having how much a corner has to learn from a new defense and how they play and the technique and the coverage compared to a veteran wide receiver in an open offense who's probably going to be doing what he was doing in Detroit and Seattle. It would have been difficult, I think, to get Gary and Conley, ready to go immediately. Now you could have had the roster for a couple of weeks and then put them in, but I don't even know if there's enough film anymore on them to say, is this guy still good? Is he what he was supposed to be? Yada, yada. I mean, he's been in and out of lineup in Oakland. And, again, the Raiders, they're probably asking for something higher, a third-round pick or higher for that kind of a guy.
Is this a move that Howie – is the message to you, Geoff, you've covered this team for a while. You know Howie's moves pretty well. Is this a move that says we think we're a Super Bowl contender and this is our move to get us on that level?
Mike, if that's not the mentality in making this trade, then Howie Roseman should be fired. Because ordinarily, Now, Eitan knows this, right? I have said since the beginning of spring, summer, that the Eagles should treat this year differently than they've treated almost any other year. And take Nick Foles. I was not an advocate of trading Nick Foles unless they got a first-round pick, because I felt that this team was good enough to win a Super Bowl, and that if Carson Wentz were to get injured, that you would want Nick Foles to get in there again and take over the spot, and that if you didn't have Nick Foles, you had to have Nate Sudfeld. That's a whole lot of uncertainty for a team that's ready to win. So I take that approach. Ordinarily, I would say giving up a third-round pick for a 30-year-old wide receiver who has 8 games left on his deal is the stupidest move any GM could ever make. But this is different. This is win now. At least I think it is, and it should be. If Howie Roseman didn't think that and made this move, he should be fired. But I have to think his mindset is, I can't upgrade this defense because the prices are just too high for the talent that's out there. But I can upgrade my offense, and if I can strengthen an area that's kind of weak right now, if I can strengthen this area and it can overcome our other deficiencies, then we can win this division, get back into the playoffs, and we have Carson Wentz.
Jeff,
I have to think that that's their mentality.
We've already seen the dumbest GM move ever. That's trading a first-round pick for Amari Cooper.
Yeah, although I would have said the Khalil Mack trade by adding a second-round pick. I mean, these teams are trying to one-up each other with stupidity, right? Like, why would you have to add a second-round pick in that trade if you're Reggie McKenzie and the Raiders to trade Khalil Mack?
I agree. I agree on premise, but I think that when you're talking about getting a guy like Mack on your defense and you're willing to add something extra, that's a little different than looking at a Golden Tate and even a Demaryius Thomas who's taken a step back and thought, that's what you could have gotten these guys for.
Oakland was the team that gave up the second round. I'm not saying the Bears made the Oakland had to give up a second round pick in that deal in which they're losing Khalil Mack. That didn't make sense to me. Like, why would you have to give up a second round pick?
Well, if you believe John Gruden, he didn't know about it until after the deal.
Well, whatever. If whoever made the deal, it's stupid. So, yeah, you're right. Oakland and Dallas did make the 2 stupid deals. But, I think Howie is thinking – like, go back to last year. You would have said the number one need for the Eagles probably is linebacker, right? You were down Jordan Hicks. You weren't very deep. You were basically with Nigel Bradham and a bunch of guys who'd never played, and they were playing so much dime to compensate. And yet what does Howie do? He goes out and gets a running back, which surprised everybody, but he strengthened an area to help his team overcome a deficiency in another area, and this kind of feels like that way.
All right, plenty more. Do you think something else happens in the next 40 minutes?
There's not a whole lot of money left this year, so it'll have to be creative. I'm not sure. But can I argue this whole DeSean Jackson is not better than Golden Tate argument
go
that
ahead.
I heard you guys having? DeSean Jackson is better than Golden Tate.
First off, that came from a text message from a listener.
Read the text again. The text message agreed with your point, Mike. That's what got this whole conversation going. Is the texter agreed with your point, and I
agreed with
jumped
my
in.
point that adding an offensive player was more of a necessity than a defensive player.
I think it was specifically about Tate versus DeSean. Do you
he
not
said
have that text?
Gill is clear and correct. Let's be clear that I am correct. Golden Tate is actually better than DeSean Jackson.
Okay, that's saying he's agreeing with what you're saying.
That's true. But that's not true.
But I don't think he said that on his own.
Yeah,
I think they're just different. Jackson offers an elite
certainly
skill
different.
set on the outside, and Tate is more versatile, maybe. I mean, he does more things than Jack. Jackson's kind of a one-trick pony at this stage of his career, right?
For the majority of his career.
Well, I mean, it's a major trick, though. I mean, like, he's averaging 23 yards a catch.
All right, let me ask you this. Would you take DeSean? I would probably take Jackson over Tate.
Why?
On this team.
No, this team is perfect for
any team. Any team. It's not a whole, like, what your offense – you take DeSean Jackson over Golden Tate every single time.
I think what Jackson offers this team, probably he could be utilized better here.
But DeSean Jackson offers you a threat more so than he does reality. And if you look at
that's all they really need.
No, but that they got that threat from Torrey Smith last year.
He offers you a threat in the locker room, too.
You got what you needed. You said it. I'll use your point when you first started talking about this. Torrey Smith took the top, or at least was a threat to take the top off the defense. We put way too much emphasis on what DeSean Jackson can do, because I agree with you. It's special in what he can do, but we put way too much emphasis in that is a connector or that is going to be take you from point A to point B, A on the field, B winning a football game. I think we overemphasize way too much.
I think we actually put good emphasis and maybe not enough on how he completely changed the running game, because you'll never put a safety in the box as long as you see DeSean Jackson out there. I mean, he just
and yet that rarely, but that doesn't even transfer. Even when he was here, when he had his career year, he got taken out of that playoff game because his body can't handle the punishment that deep. And even still, you can see that this year's team, it's not like there are 10 guys in the box. Like Wendell Smallwood, of all people, has been able to thrive in the running game given an opportunity. So I don't know what problem DeSean's solving.
Here, Tom. We're not saying you can't run if you have Golden Tate out there. I'm just simply saying what defenses have to account for when DeSean is out there, because of his ability to track the ball, catch it, and beat anybody, is extraordinarily hard to find and makes him very unique and very, very significant. And I'm fairly certain if you ask 32 GMs which wide receiver they'd rather have on their team, at least 30 of them would take DeSean Jackson.
I think it's less cut and dry, as you're saying. I think it depends on the need of that particular team.
No, I don't. I really do. You're just talking about DeSean. Go look at his numbers.
I have his numbers up for this year.
Outside of Antonio Brown, Golden Tate's
good.
Golden Tate's the only guy over the last 2 years to put up Antonio Brown numbers.
Tate's got the most yards after catch in the last 3 years than anyone in the league.
More than DeSean.
That's absolutely true. That's true. He's a high-volume catcher for that reason. I understand that.
Let me ask you a question.
Not as big of a deal.
How big is the size of the fat head of DeSean Jackson's head on your wall at home?
I kiss it every night. I do.
Do you light a candle in honor of DeSean?
No, I just respect what he brings.
You do.
I mean, listen, I respect both those guys, but I do think DeSean Jackson has far more of a widespread impact on an offense.
What?
I shouldn't even say
it's the terms.
Far more.
It's the adjectives you use that I have an issue with.
Yeah. I look, and Mosher, we got to roll.
The writer that you are.
Geoff Mosher on the Boardwalk Honda hotline. At Geoff Mosher NFL. Send all your hate tweets over there. Thanks, pal.
See you guys.